Knowledge is power, and we love to learn together. If you don't know me, my name is Craig, and I'm the technical director for Tile Bar. And our team comes from many backgrounds and has many specialties. And whether we're trying to learn a new product or troubleshooting an issue, we want to have the most knowledgeable team in the industry. So we focus on training. And you may think learning tile is difficult, but everybody has to start somewhere. And today, we are gonna learn how to set tile. The great thing is we are live on site in Panama with our team, and they're gonna learn everything from troweling out the mortar to learning how to grout and making sure it's cleaned up and done correctly. In this video, you're gonna get the basics of everything you need to know about tile setting. So grab a drink, sit back, relax, and let's learn together. Buenos dias, amigos.
Buenos dias.
That's it for me in the Spanish. No, hablo poco español, but I'm glad all of you speak English. Thanks for having us. It's so awesome to finally see you face to face. I've seen you in screens, and I've bragged on you guys. I mean, our team in Inwood's great. Christina, yes. But you guys ask better questions and are always more freely to talk. They're like scared to talk to me. I don't know what it is. So I don't know if maybe I've got some Panama flair. I don't know, but whatever we got going on, I love it. I love your questions, and I'm so excited to be here. Today, if you've never set tile before today, you're gonna do it. So that's exciting. If you have set tile before, there's gonna be some redundant things that we're gonna talk about, we're gonna go over. But my job here, and as always, every week, every month, is to try to give you guys some answers to help you help your clients better. And in my opinion, there's no way to do that than just getting dirty and doing it. And you never understand why a tile has this crap on the front of it until you actually see a tile with crap on the front of it. So this is kind of what I like to say, and then what we're gonna do today. My goal with Tile Bar is to bring as much knowledge to the process as possible. And I don't claim to know everything. I do know how to Google things maybe better than you do, so therefore I can Google an answer for you. But I've been in the industry, in the commercial tile industry, for over 20 years. I've seen almost everything, but I love talking about it. I love trying to help others, and so that's what we're here to do today. And we're gonna just kind of do a quick review of some tools that we carry, some we don't carry. We're not gonna mix Thinset, but I'm gonna talk about it. Directional troweling, if you've listened to me long enough, you've heard that term before. I'm going to show you how to do that and why it works and why it doesn't work. We're going to set tile, and we're going to talk through it and answer questions. All right. So let's start with getting set up and what you need to get your tile stuff going. Tile Bar, obviously we've got a ton of tile. If you were on the call last week, we sold 36 million square feet of tile last year. That's crazy. But when you think about that, you got to think about you need other stuff to set that tile. And the number one thing that you need on your job site is clean water. Tile setting is kind of dirty, but most of the things that we do, you can clean up with water. So access to clean water is critical. You don't ever want to continue to use dirty water. That is one of the issues you'll find in your cleaning and maintenance questions that you get is, why does my tile look terrible? Well, it looks terrible because you cleaned your entire room with one bucket of water and you just moved the dirt from one corner to another corner. So clean water is critical. Buckets are always handy. I'm looking at, you know, I'm kind of bringing on tools. That's part of my job. I look for new things. I'm looking at getting us some branded buckets and getting some kits together that if you buy a glass tile from us, you'd be like, hey, you need the glass tile kit, which will come with a bucket, a glass tile blade, and this and that, and it'll all be housed in a bucket, and we'll ship it to you with your thing. So those, say?
For free?
Oh, nothing's free, lady. Come on now. It'll be for a low, low price of whatever percentage Sam wants to charge for it. But I'll curate it pretty cheaply. And we may do some giveaways. I don't know. But buckets are handy because buckets, number one, they hold your water. That's where you mix your Thinset, all those things. Mortars and adhesives. Those are some of the things you know. We have 4 mortars in our stocking profile. The Trowelite, which you see here, which is my favorite. We have a step up from that called Multimax, which is just a little bit stronger, a little bit creamier, a little bit easier to use, but a lot more expensive. We have a step down from that, which is called LHT Plus, and that's just, it's got a little less adhesion, but still works great for floors and large format tiles. Anybody know what size your tile needs to be for it to be considered large and heavy?
Anything above 12 by 12?
Good. That's a good question, and that's what I thought for many years. But it's actually 15 inches.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they chose 15 inches, but after 15 inches, if you have one side of your tile that is 15 inches or larger, it's considered large and heavy. And that's shortened to LHT. So you'll see that, and you'll get questions about that. Is that an LHT Thinset? That's what they mean. You need it for when you have a tile that's large, because as we've talked about before, when your tile gets large, the bow in it gets more pronounced. And so you need to be able to build up that mortar to where it's thicker so it makes contact with your tile. The great thing about the 3 mortars we carry are they're all 3 LHT. So once we have our mortar, we got to get it onto the backerboard or the floor or the wall. And so those are some of the things. A mix and paddle, you put that on a low speed drill and you stick it in your bucket and you mix it up. Margin trowel is the most handy thing that a tile setter has. This scoops, this chops. I mean, you can do anything. It goes right here in your back pocket, and then you sit on it and you hurt yourself. But regardless, you always like to have one of these, to clean out your bucket. And if you're mixing a little bit of mortar, this is good to do that. And your notch trowel, which you'll see in front of you. So the key to picking a trowel is the larger the tile, the larger the notch of the trowel. So on our new instruction guides, you'll see that, and you'll see a kind of rudimentary chart. Some tile installers will have their own idea of what they want to use, and that's just from doing it over the years. But if you've got a really small tile, you're going to want to use this, and they even make them smaller. This is a V-notch trowel. I think I put one of these out there. It puts about the same on there, but these get smaller and larger as your tile size gets smaller and larger. And we'll see a little bit of that.
No, they're all flat, right?
They're all flat on the bottom, yep.
If it's larger, does it have to, does it need a curve maybe for the space?
Not really. The curve is for a lot of different trowel manufacturers have tried different shapes just to see what works better. I think our 1/2 by 1/2 is a curved, but square, curve, it doesn't matter. It really is, this is nothing but a gauge that puts the appropriate amount of Thinset on a flat substrate so that you can stick your tile. And what you want, because when you're putting down the 1/4 by 1/4, after you set your tile, what do you think the thickness of your mortar is going to be? Think of the directional troweling that we've talked about. When you trowel it out and then you set your tile, you don't want these air pockets in there. You want to make sure they go away. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But whatever your tall thickness is, because sometimes it's a 1/4 by 3/8, 1/4 by 1/4, 1/4 by 1/2. Your thickness of mortar is going to be 1/2 of that. So it's only going to be 1/8 of an inch thick. So now we've got our tile on the floor, and we got to have grout. Grout, what used to be our biggest complaint, grouts have gotten a lot better now and are a lot more color consistent. And here's our grouting tools. We got a grout float, cleaning sponge, and we're going to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Read the directions. Read the directions. And a lot of older tile setters don't like this because it used to be that a bag of mortar, which is 50 pounds normally, it's your typical bag of mortar, used to take twice as much water. So they tend to overwater it because they're used of a simple mixture. And that mixture was just sand and cement and maybe a little bit of latex in it. The Trilite, which I think is the back of this bag, has got so much more in it. It's got so many different polymers in it. It doesn't need as much water to be wet because it's replaced a lot of the cement with other chemicals. So once you measure out your water, and it's funny how when you don't measure it, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And then you mix it. So you measure it out, you mix it. So it gives you different, which kind of goes back to what you said. So there's a different amount for thin bed or large heavy tile. So if you got a large and heavy tile, you only have 4.6 quarts. But if you got a glass tile, you can use that. Gives you a little bit different consistency. You mix it. This is the thing a lot of people don't do. They don't wait. Because there's so many chemicals in the material, once you mix it up and there's no clumps and there's no powder in there, you need time for those chemicals to break down, actually hit the water and start working. And a lot of times before you do that wait period, it's really stiff. It's like peanut butter. And nobody wants to spread peanut butter. They get scared and they're like, well, we got to put more water in it. Just wait. If you wait 5 minutes, it gives those polymers a chance to wet out. And when they wet out, you do another spin and mix it really quick, and then it's really creamy. And then you can be able to install it. Those are some of the things, if you miss these steps, can cause a failure. Now, there's a lot of margin built into these things, which means if you don't mix it for 5 minutes, is it really that big of a deal? If you don't wait 2 minutes, is it really that big of a deal? Probably not, but once you start cutting corners, you know, you're going to cut corners too many times and then you're going to get a failure. So, number one, follow the directions. All right, here we go, the trowel procedure, and we'll do this in a minute. But whenever you trowel your material out, and if you've watched my video on it, you know that I lost it. There it is. That you got the ridges and the valleys, and so the ridges are going to make contact with the tile, and the valleys are going to be full of air. So once you do that, you put the tile down and you move it perpendicular to the ridges, and that forces the air out. So what happens is these ridges fall onto each other and collapse. The air goes out, and then you get 100% coverage. And that is how you get a great bond. When you don't force the air out or you use the wrong procedure, you get air spots in it, which then it'll stick to the floor or the wall. But once again, think of that elevator and I drop my hammer and it hits that spot, shattered. But if it hits this tile, it may crack it, but it'll still bounce off and it won't lose bond. So when you don't follow the right procedure, that's how you end up with hollow spots, cracked grout. It can lose bond easily. But when you follow the right procedure and you have I always say this looks like mountain valleys, the mountains, you've got great coverage and it's going to work well. This is what they call traveling wax. So what happens is after the tile cures, it runs under a machine and it just puts this little thin thing of wax on it. So when the tiles ship together, it doesn't scratch.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason it's there. It should just come off. Now, I have seen some that don't, and I've seen some that are issues. But it should just pop off with your finger. If it doesn't come off with that, like we've had some of our Hex Art series have some issues with it, you know, that's when you have to maybe possibly heat it up and clean it off that way. But that's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to just kind of flake off or rub off. Just because we're talking about tile, if you see the things on the back, that's kind of a similar substance. When they're firing the tile, they don't want it to, the wet clay to stick to anything. So if you see the white powder, sometimes it comes off on your hands. It's like when you're baking a cake, you put powder on, or bread, you put powder down to put your dough in so it doesn't stick. Same concept, probably different. I don't think that's flour. I'm not going to taste it. All right, so what you have in front of you is tiles. You can set it in any pattern you want to. Now Mario and I cut these boards. I'm not sure. I thought we had cut them exactly 2 tiles wide, but we didn't. So maybe come up. It's okay if it hangs off if you want it to. That's up to you. But what we're going to do is, since
We should rub off the glue?
yes, you should take off the glue. But since we are not mixing Thinset, this is called mastic. This is a glue. It's organic. It used a lot in backsplashes, at least in America, we do. I don't like this because what it is, sometimes people try to use it in showers and it breaks down in showers and doesn't last very long. The great thing about it for what we're doing today, it's already mixed up. We can scoop it out, we can use it, and then we can close it up and you guys can go do your backsplashes this weekend with it. So if we were, what I suggest doing is take you a big glob out, and the first procedure that you always like to do is take the flat side of your trowel and just smear it all over there. And what that does, and I'll do a little example. What that does is when you have a mortar on a substrate, sometimes it doesn't get into the pores. So you want to take it and really get that mortar into the pores. Now it's okay, you can see through it. You don't want it, you don't want to try to create any body of it. You just want to kind of push that in there. And what that does is it just creates a better bond between your substrate and your tile. Hit that subscribe button if you're getting value from this video, and let us know what you like and what you've learned. Click the like button and the bell icon so you don't miss any training opportunities. Yeah, good. Let's do it.
I used to work on construction.
Oh, this is second hat to you then. No problem.
So I don't have to use this part.
Not yet. And I would go ahead and what you want to do is, instead of smearing it on like cake icing, is go ahead and scrape it all off. You want to be able to, yep, you can scrape it all off. And if you want to put it back in the bucket.
So it doesn't have to be thick?
Nope, doesn't need to be thick. All you're doing is kind of filling up any open pores that are in that substrate with that pressure. Yes, you were on the wrong side, but it's okay. You can switch with me. Did you flip it over, or was it put on there? With the dots? It's okay. And so now the next step is we're going to use the ridge side of our trowel. So we're going to take the glob of mortar, which is adhesive here, and we're just going to put it on our board. And I will say this is easier to do on larger surfaces. It's not terribly easy on this small board. And we're just going to take our trowel and we're going to move it in a single direction, making clear ridges In the yep,
The same
in that same thing. And when you have an area that maybe wasn't covered or didn't have enough on it, just put it back on there and then go again. But going in a consistent direction. Now, does this help you have a little bit more sympathy for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, that's easy. Poor old lady.
Yours looks good. Yeah, you're fine. You can start making the ridges.
Oh.
You're overachieving here. Yours is one thing I didn't mention. When you're troweling, try to get your trowel almost 90 degrees. Because when you lean it over, well, you leaning it over, you're making that 1/4 inch like a 1/16 of an inch.
So it's like this.
Is it good like this?
That's pretty good. A little sloppy, but that's okay. Yeah, that the problem you have is that area right there, and I would just put a glob right there and just do another. Leave this alone. That's perfect. Now, since we don't have grout spacers, these tiles are ceramic tiles. They probably could be set with a 1/16 of an inch grout. If we want to just push them together tight, that's fine. We don't suggest that in the real world. And the reason is when you push tiles together, they rub up against each other because everything moves all the time. And when they rub up against each other, they can then crack. So grout gives you a little bit of comfort room, but also when you start pushing them tight together, as you see there, sometimes they're not the same size and it can look funny.
Right.
Because especially these tiles weren't made at the same time because they're.
Try to make a little bit of space.
There you go.
Can I add the adhesive directly to the like?
To.
Now I just clean this.
Yep, and yep, exactly. And it's going to move around. These, this takes a long. That's one of the downsides of mastic is it takes a long time to dry. The main thing about this is it doesn't have to be beautiful, but I want you to understand that there's a lot of clients that we deal with day in and day out that are trying to do this on their own.
Yeah.
And
It's quite challenging if you're trying to do it by
and you never done it
yourself and
before?
you've never done it before? Yeah, it's challenging.
And just think,
And then you risk to just mess up your project.
and your stuff, and especially if we're using mortar,
Yeah.
it's drying on the wall. And so if you're moving too slow, you can get to a point where the mortar's dry. And even if you put tile on it, it's going to fall off.
Okay.
And so you got to scrape that off and start over. So the
Time you can leave that on the wall. Drying.
in normal situations, like 45 minutes, you know, but
Until it dries, and then
yeah.
you put the tile.
yeah, the key is if you touch it and it doesn't come off on your finger, it doesn't transfer to your
not
finger,
ready
it's dried out. You need to start over. You need to remix and start over completely. But a lot of people get ahead of themselves and are like, well, I'm gonna do this whole wall, and they'll mix up the mortar and they'll spread Thinset out on the whole wall.
It's already dry.
And then by the time they get to the end, it's already dry. And it may stick for a minute.
And what about this? If you like close it?
You close it, that'll last a year.
Oh.
You know, as long as it's cleaned up and there's no air in it, it'll last a long time. I've had buckets at my house that I'll do projects with, and they're 2-3 years old. But that's the good thing about the mastic. And I've toyed around with us stocking some just for, you know, maybe creating a backsplash product, you know, and that's what we call it, backsplash mortar, because once you start using that in other places, I get a little weary about it because of being in contact with water, because it is organic.
Right.
And anything that's organic, you know, is going to breed mold and all that other stuff. Now, A lot of them say that, and maybe that's just the old part of me. That's what they used to do. But, I didn't say this before, but let me say it now. Oh, there's watch out, there's a rise in the floor right there. But after you set it, you should always take a float or a beating block. And what that does is that evens and flattens everything out.
Now, when you do that, do you do it like on the corners
Yep.
and the edges, or on the tile?
Do you have to do that before it dries out, or after?
Yes, before. Right now is the time when you do that. So after you set it, you get it in your place, and then you go back and all that does is that makes sure your edges are even and evens out any misconceptions. Or you use the leveling spacers. All right, this is the most important thing. So since we're not mixing an entire bag, because that would be wasteful, I did some calculations. I borrowed somebody's scale, that somebody has a scale in the office. I measured out 2 pounds of material. So, and then we know if we have 8 pounds, we have to follow those directions. And so then I did some interpolating, because for 8 pounds, I need 0.6 liters. This is 500 milliliters. Anyway, after all of the calculations, I came up with roughly 1/3 of a bottle. So everybody somewhat agree?
Okay.
Close? All right, we're going to dump that in there. And what we want to do you cook?
Yes. I bake.
You bake? Okay. We want it like a batter. No lumps, no stuff. So you can just start mixing it around in there. And once you get a good creamy, no lump or anything in there, we will go on to the next step. So as she's mixing that, and feel free to take a look at what she's doing if you want to. There's a couple of ways to mix it. You know, you can mix it like she's doing with the margin trowel, or you can use a paddle on a slow speed mixer, especially when you're doing a lot. But when you're doing a little bit like this, it's okay just to mix it up like that. Grout has a couple of different purposes, 3 to be exact. One is structural. So the grout, once you push it in there in the joint, you want it to bond 3 different ways. One tile, the other tile, and also to the substrate. So you want to push that grout all the way in so it's completely full and the grout's bonded to both tiles and the substrate. That way it makes your system stronger. That's the first thing of why we use grout. The second thing is, may I use yours as an example? Grout fills the gaps. So if you're in a shower, when you have sitting water, it molds, right? So the grout fills in here. It doesn't make it waterproof, but it keeps water from going inside your system and sitting there and molding and then causing a big problem. Now, water can permeate through grout, so you need to still have a waterproofing system if you're in a shower, but this just allows the water, the majority of it hits the grout and runs down the wall. It'll still soak in a little bit on the surface, but hopefully that dries out. So that's the second thing grout does. The third thing grout does is it's just prettier most of the time. As we know, tiles aren't square, so when you add a grout line, it helps it look more square. And then sometimes you can add glow-in-the-dark grout or glitter grout or pink grout or whatever and try to jazz it up if you like. We're just using boring old white grout today. So those are the 3 things that grout does for your system. I'm going to use that again. So if we don't have any more questions, we'll talk about this handy dandy little gadget here. Normally we use a grout float like this. That's for big projects. You put it on the wall, and you get your grout. The main thing this is meant for is to push the grout into the joint. This is just meant to put pressure and to push that material into these joints all the way down to the substrate. The key to grout is, we always say you have to have grout. There's very few occasions in tile work where you don't need grout. We'll talk a little bit about that next week. But you want 3 points of contact: edge of the tile, and the substrate. So you see when you've got these really tight joints, why it helps to have a grout that's got a really small aggregate. So that when you plop that on here and you're pushing that in there, you can get that grout all the way to the bottom of the tile. Epoxy grout, you can't seal it. So it's a pure chemical grout. So when you mix epoxy together, it's a 2 or 3 part system. It comes together, it kicks off, there's a chemical reaction, and you really just made plastic. And the plastic is not. But cement grouts can be sealed. And there's different degrees. When you have your really cheap cement grouts, they need to be sealed. When you start getting into the Permacolor and Permacolor Select, they don't have to be sealed, but it helps. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna dump you out some grout. I'm gonna use this as my example. And without trying to make a mess, you know, I made fun of you all day yesterday. You're gonna take your grout float. I'll use this one since you're using this one. And you're just gonna work it in. It's gonna be different than what you think it's gonna be, but that's okay. Work it in, and you're gonna work all the joints until they're full. No air bubbles, and then the key to having a good clean installation, you're gonna take the edge of your float and you're gonna use it like a squeegee. And you're gonna go in a diagonal and squeegee off all of the excess, and you're gonna drop it in the bucket. You're gonna squeegee off the excess and you're gonna drop it in the bucket. What that does is that gets you to a point to where we can, this is not grout, where we can just let it rest and wait a little bit. It'll set up and then we can clean it again. The reason, anybody know why you go at a diagonal?
It cleans better?
Nope.
It still helps it
Because it's not gonna go with the lines and scrap them like.
Yes. You're not gonna go and your grout float's not gonna drop into the joint and it'll rake everything out. I'll get you a prize, and you get a prize for mixing the grout. All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
I totally.
You scraped it right in your lap.
Yeah.
It's okay, I got it on video. A little bit of grout therapy. Is that something?
That tile is there.
Looking good. It looks like it. It looks like you've got enough.
It actually got more than I thought.
Like it took more in the joints than you thought?
I was imagining.
Let me know when you're ready and I'll bring the bucket over and you can get the excess off.
Oh, I know why you do it this way. 'Cause if
Well, that's what you're doing. You're doing it the wrong way. What are you doing?
this way.
You've already pressed it in. You need to turn it up on the edge. Squeegee. Yeah, push the other way.
So now, gotta wait until it dries.
Oh, this way.
Yes, see. Yep, you're actually really good. Okay, so anybody have any idea why you wouldn't just start cleaning it right now?
It's not
Because you
dry.
gotta let it sit.
It's gonna clean the
You
grout.
can remove the
just-
grout that you just.
That you just put in there, right? And so
24 hours, right? To wait.
that is that's what they say. But is that telling you how to grout it? No, that's just cleaning it and waiting on it.
Okay.
Number 12 is grout. This is, I should have put up the grout instructions. So let's see what our grout instructions say. So we installed the grout number 4. We squeegeed it off, number 5. Wait. It says approximately 30 minutes. We got a small set. So we may not wait that long, because what time is it? We're actually supposed to be done at noon. But you're absolutely right. What would happen if you get on it too fast? You get water on it, and all you're doing is just pulling grout out of the joint constantly, and you're not getting anything clean. So what we do, that 30-minute wait time allows for the grout to set up enough in the joint, and then you can clean it a little with a little bit, my grandma said elbow grease. Do y'all say elbow grease here? Yeah, a little bit of elbow grease and not worry about damaging the joint. Pardon me. So what we're gonna do is, we can't wait the whole time because we don't have it. But the trick is, so you've got the grout in your joints and you got it smeared on your tile. Sponge, and you know we sell the sponges that have the sponge and the white side. The white pad helps out a lot, especially if you have to wait the full 30 minutes, because it gives you a little bit of scrubby. But we're just going to take the sponge, circle, 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 and it's going to loosen everything up. And then we're going to take the edge of the, we're going to clean it, take the edge of the sponge, once again on a diagonal, and pull it. And it's going to wipe off the majority of the grout. We're going to flip it over, and we're going to pull it again, and then just touch up as we go. So we're going to have to share sponges, because I only have 3. And we want it just this wet. Feel how wet that is. Not very, right? Because if it's really soaked, it causes it'll run into your joint and be a mess. So I'm gonna give that to you. Scrubby, scrub, scrub.
I don't know why.
Here you go.
It was on a mesh, so you didn't have to line up each piece with spacers.
Yeah.
We did only use one product, not 2, to do the whole thing. So it was an easier process.
And you see how that gets off the majority of the dry stuff. And you're good. Just leave it alone. Hand me the sponge. Now do your diagonals. Okay. And the reason it's a little streaky is because the grout joints are not as dry as they should be. But I would leave it just like that, and you're gonna be fine. Here's yours. After it dries, like this afternoon, a dry cloth will wipe it right off. Okay. Didn't the Panama team do great? They were learning for the first time the ins and outs of a tile project, and they were able to conquer spreading mortar, setting the tile, and learning how to grout. Cleanup was obviously a little messier than normal because we're just learning for the first time. As you're journeying through your tile project, don't forget to look at the many training opportunities we have available on our social media pages. Check those out. If you have questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to see you. Send us a picture of your tile project, and don't miss the next training opportunity. Until next time, let's keep learning together and tile the world.